General Hospital spoilers for Wednesday, August 13th, indicate that Jason Morgan will threaten Drew Kane over Danny Morgan's incarceration. Josslyn Jack's Britt Westbourne twist will also surprise Vaughn, so there will be some major developments on the ABC serial. On Wednesday's GH episode, Anna Devane will press Jack Brennan for further details on Vaughn and Josslyn's latest WSB assignment. Brennan will downplay the threat once more, claiming that they would know if something was wrong, but Anna will worry if he is certain. Josslyn was stunned at the Five Poppies resort when she noticed Britt sitting next to Vaughn. Josslyn appears to be ducking out of sight as she attempts to digest what she has just witnessed. Pascal will soon chastise Britt for wasting time, so he'll put pressure on her to return to work. Britt will tell Pascal that he is not in command as she gradually pulls herself away from the lounging. Back with Vaughn, he'll see Josslyn and know that she's upset. It will leave Vaughn with questions about what is going on. Josslyn will mention the woman she saw Vaughn with and say she knows her. Vaughn will be caught off guard when Josslyn says Britt is meant to be dead. In Port Charles, Rocco Falconeri will have some good news for Giovanni Gio Palmieri now that Lulu Spencer has decided to adopt Outback. Meanwhile, Carly Spencer will advise Liesl Obrecht not to cause trouble between Rocco and his mother. Hurting Lulu would entail hurting Rocco, thus Carly will press Obrecht to show that she does not want to do so. Alexis Davis at the Quartermain home will be outraged now that Drew has sought Danny's arrest. It will make Alexis furious as she asks Drew to cut the crap and stop this nonsense. Alexis may point out that if Drew goes ahead with this, Scout Quartermain will only blame herself for begging Danny to take her away from camp. Alexis may persuade Drew to stop wasting everyone's time, as kidnapping accusations are unlikely to succeed. Drew appears to give in at the end, but Jason will want to make sure his brother understands something. Jason will presume Drew's actual problem is with him, and he will not want Drew to use Danny to make his father suffer. Don't ever try to do it through my son again, Jason warns in Wednesday's JH teaser. Willow Tate would then inform Elizabeth Baldwin about what happened with Lucas Jones, who continued to push until Willow slapped him. According to General Hospital teasers, Willow will relate her side of the tale, so stay tuned for Elizabeth's response. Willow Tate will play defense on Wednesday, August 13th, according to General Hospital teasers, while Drew Kane appears to be ready to give up. Carly Spencer will also warn Liesl Obrecht, so here's what GH viewers might expect. For starters, it appears that Drew may back down when Alexis Davis and Jason Morgan throw some threats about. Drew just told Harrison Chase to arrest Danny Morgan for kidnapping Scout Quartermain, but he might drop the charges in the end. However, Drew plans to make a dramatic statement on Wednesday's episode. Drew may warn Scout that if he continues to play hardball, he will never return to the Quartermain mansion. Whatever the case, Jason will be furious over Drew's treatment of Danny, and will require that any future disagreements be resolved between them alone. Meanwhile, Willow will jump to her own defense as she tells Elizabeth Baldwin what happened to Lucas Jones. Although Willow may apologize for losing her cool, Lucas undoubtedly provoked her. Even so, Willow violently assaulted a coworker, so Lucas might cause serious difficulties for her if he chooses to. Elizabeth will hear Willow's version of the events surrounding the slap, so stay tuned to discover if Willow will face penalties. Rocco Falconeri will be pleased to take Outback home now that Lulu Spencer has consented to adopt her. Rocco will inform Giovanni Gio Palmieri of the news and promise to take good care of the puppy. Carly will then warn Liesl about the hurt she may give Rocco if she attempts to strike a wedge in his relationship with Lulu. Obrecht believes Lulu set Carly up for eviction using the fake mold explanation, so she threatens to tell Rocco the truth. Carly will try to hush Liesl while emphasizing the need of doing what is best for Rocco. Jack Brennan will be interrogated by Anna Devane. Anna will be determined to obtain updates on Vaughn and Josslyn Jack's mission in Dalmatia, especially given the possibility for danger. Brennan will continue to assume that everything is proceeding as planned, but Anna will question how he can be positive without hearing from Josslyn and Vaughn. At the Five Poppies resort, Britt will hear more complaints from Pascal, but she will remind him that he is not the true boss. Josslyn, on the other hand, appears to plan on meeting Vaughn in secret rather than in front of Britt. Josslyn will then reveal how Britt appeared to die while saving her life, and wonder how she is still alive. Vaughn will hear the entire narrative and suspect Britt of faking her death, raising suspicions about her cooperation and coercion in this project. According to General Hospital teasers, Josslyn will cross some lines that she shouldn't on this WSB assignment. The air in Port Charles hummed with tension, making the summer heat feel heavy and almost stifling. Jason Morgan stood in a shadowed area of the pier, his eyes steely and unwaveringly fixated on Drew Kane. The two men, once linked by blood and history, now faced off as adversaries, their past entangled in a web of loyalty and betrayal. Jason's leather jacket clung to his form, a quiet monument to the life he'd chosen, one of calculated risks and little trust. Drew, on the other hand, carried himself with the polished confidence of a man who had forged a new identity, one that glittered in the light of power and ambition. But tonight, the weight of Jason's stare caused that assurance to falter just slightly. "Do you think you can just stroll back into this town and grab what I have?" Jason's voice was low, a growl that held the threat of violence. His hands remained calm, but his knuckles whitened as he clenched them, a tiny indication of the tempest developing within. Drew didn't flinch, but his jaw tightened, revealing the effort it required to maintain his position. "I'm not taking anything, Jason," he remarked, his tone measured yet defiant. "I am building something. Something you wouldn't understand because you're too busy playing the lone wolf." The words hung between them, sharp and deliberate, with each syllable intended to provoke. The pier was silent, except for the soft lapping of the sea against the docks and the distant hum of the city. It was the kind of silence that accentuated every word and movement, making the moment feel as if it could shatter with a single false step. Jason took a step forward, his boots pressing against the wooden boards. "You're playing a dangerous game, Drew," he added, his voice sinking even lower and the threat clear. "Do you believe you are untouchable because you have money, a name and a gorgeous office? You are not. You cross me, you cross the people I protect, and you'll see how quickly everything falls apart." Drew's eyes narrowed, but he didn't back down. He'd been through worse than Jason's threats, or so he assured himself. The recollection of incarceration, of fighting for survival in a world devoid of privilege, flickered through his thoughts. He wasn't the same person who had shared Jason's face, experiences, and life. He was a newcomer who had pushed his way to the top, and he wasn't going to let Jason's shadow fall over him. "You don't scare me, Jason," he remarked, his tone firm and almost demanding. "You're not the only one who knows how to fight dirty." The standoff was broken by the sound of rapid, deliberate footfall, which slashed through the tension like a blade. Both men turned, their instincts sharpened by years of peril, to see Josslyn Jax coming, her face a mix of determination and barely restrained rage. Her blonde hair caught the dim glimmer of the streetlights, and her normally pleasant eyes blazed with an intensity that made both men halt. She did not recognize Jason and did not even look at him. Her attention was solely on Vaughn, who had been watching the conflict from a distance, his smug smirk fading as Josslyn closed the gap between them. Vaughn, the consummate opportunist, had been circling Port Charles like a vulture, his charm and guile opening doors that should have remained closed. He was new to town, a wild card with a propensity for causing problems, and Josslyn had his phone number from the moment they met. She had met men like him before, smooth talkers who believed they could manipulate their way into power. But Josslyn was not just anyone. She was Carly's daughter, raised in a society where loyalty was paramount and betrayal meant death. She'd learned to read people, to see the flaws in their veneers, and Vaughn's were obvious. "Do you think you're slick?" Josslyn's voice pierced through the night air as she came to a stop only inches from Vaughn. He raised an eyebrow, and his smile returned, but less confident and more theatrical. "I don't know what you're talking about, Joss," he answered, his voice tinged with fake innocence. But Josslyn didn't buy it. She'd overheard his conversation at the Metro Court, where he boasted about playing both sides, pitting Jason and Drew against each other to establish his own foothold in Port Charles. It was a risky move, but it was sloppy, and Josslyn had no patience for sloppiness. She moved closer, her voice lowering to a menacing whisper. "I hear you, Vaughn. I understand what you're doing. Using Jason and Drew as pawns, believing you can outwit everyone. You're not as intelligent as you think." Her remarks were sharp, each one landing like a punch. Vaughn's smile had evaporated totally, replaced by a glimmer of worry. He hadn't expected this, that Josslyn of all people would call him out. She was meant to be simply another wealthy woman, a gorgeous face without substance. But Josslyn was anything but. She'd grown up in the shadow of men like Jason, who followed a code, and she'd learned to wield her own power with the same ruthlessness. Jason and Drew, temporarily forgotten, observed the discussion in quiet. Jason's countenance was impenetrable, yet there was a glimmer of approval in his gaze. He'd always known Josslyn was tough, but witnessing her take on Vaughn with such vehemence reminded him of Carly in her prime. Fearless, unwavering, and impossible to ignore. Drew, meanwhile, felt a twinge of something he couldn't quite put his finger on, perhaps pride or unease. Josslyn was his niece, but she was also a force of nature, and her devotion to Jason highlighted their differences. Vaughn attempted to recuperate, his charm reactivating. "You're misunderstanding, Josslyn," he replied, spreading his hands as if to comfort her. "I'm just trying to do business here. Make things work for everyone." But Josslyn wasn't having it. She took another stride, her gaze fixed on him, and the air around her appeared to hum with energy. "Save it," she snapped. "You don't work for anyone except yourself. And if you think you can come into this town and play games with my family, you're about to be proven incorrect." The words struck Vaughn like a physical blow, leaving him speechless for a while. He had underestimated her, and it was hurting him now. Josslyn didn't need to raise her voice or hurl a punch. Her very presence made him reconsider every decision he'd taken. She moved away from him, as if he were nothing, and confronted Jason and Drew. "You two need to figure this out," she continued, leaving no space for disagreement. "Because if you don't, people like him," she jerked her thumb toward Vaughn, "will continue to believe they can take what is ours." Jason nodded, a rare acknowledgement of her point. Drew, on the other hand, hesitated, his pride at odds with the truth of her words. The dock fell hushed again, the weight of the moment settling on everyone. When Vaughn sensed the tide moving against him, he took a step back, his confidence crushed. He came to Port Charles expecting to outmaneuver the players, but he didn't count on Josslyn. She was the unexpected wild card, and her words lingered in his thoughts as he retreated into the darkness, planning his next move. Jason and Drew exchanged glances, their tension still obvious but alleviated by Josslyn's intervention. They both knew she was correct. Whatever their differences, they couldn't afford to let outsiders use them. The night went on, the city bustling in the distance, and for a brief while, the pier felt like the center of the universe, where loyalties were tried, threats were made, and a young woman demonstrated she was a force to be reckoned with. The ripples from that night would spread, as they always do in Port Charles. Jason's admonition to Drew was more than just words. It was a line drawn in the sand, a pledge to protect what was his at whatever cost. Drew, for his part, was not backing down, but Josslyn's statements had raised doubts. Could he truly compete against Jason and win? And nursing his wounds, Vaughn realized he'd have to proceed carefully. Josslyn had exposed him, causing a shift in the balance of power that none of them completely comprehended. As the stars burned above, the pier lay deserted once more, but the echoes of that confrontation remained. Port Charles was a community based on secrets and alliances, and tonight, those foundations were shattered. Josslyn, with her passionate loyalty and keen intuition, had reminded everyone that power was more than simply muscle or money. It was about knowing who you were and what you stood for. And in this community, that was the most dangerous weapon. In Port Charles's rich tapestry, where relationships are as fragile as the secrets they conceal, the action unfolds with a relentless intensity that keeps everyone on edge. Willow Tate, a woman caught up in a web of personal and professional upheaval, finds herself at the center of a storm that threatens to shatter the fragile relationship she has battled to keep. Her recent argument with Lucas Jones, a co-worker who led her into a physical outburst, has left her trying to explain her behavior. The slap she administered was more than simply a loss of control. It was a spark that could ignite ramifications she is unprepared for. Willow's voice trembles with sadness and defiance as she tells Elizabeth Baldwin about her situation. She describes how Lucas pushed her to the brink, his remarks biting into wounds that were already fresh due to her continual troubles. Elizabeth listens with a cautious combination of empathy and caution, aware that Willow's actions could threaten her position at the hospital. The weight of potential consequences hangs heavy. Lucas may report her, turning a furious exchange into a career disaster. Willow's defense, however, is about more than simply the incident. It is also about safeguarding the life she is attempting to establish among the upheaval of her personal connections. Drew Kane is at a crossroads, his emotions a tangled knot of loyalty, anger, and ambition. His forceful declaration, delivered with confidence while concealing his inner anguish, reverberates throughout the Quartermaine estate. The decision to threaten to keep Scout Quartermaine away from the family estate is a gamble that might either strengthen his grip or alienate him from those he cares about. Drew's confrontation with Harrison Chase, seeking Danny Morgan's arrest for kidnapping Scout, was a premeditated act that is now on the verge of unraveling. Alexis Davis and Jason Morgan's threats have pushed him to reconsider, and there's a glint in his eyes as he considers his next move. Backing down would indicate weakness, whilst pressing forward would jeopardize his already strained connections. His aggressive statement, possibly a warning to Jason to keep their disagreements between them, is a desperate attempt to exert dominance in a situation that is slipping out of his control. Drew and Jason's tension is evident, a silent war of wills that threatens to escalate into something far more devastating. Jason, ever the protector, is enraged by Drew's treatment of his son, Danny, and pledges that any future confrontations would be settled man-to-man, away from the youngsters caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, Carly Spencer travels like a storm through Port Charles, her actions motivated by a strong desire to protect those she cares about, even if it means crossing lines that others would be wary of. Her admonition to Liesl Albrecht is a lesson in controlled intensity, with her remarks cutting and precise as she strives to protect young Rocco Falconeri from the harm Albrecht's machinations may cause. Liesl, ever the provocateur, feels Lulu Spencer duped Carly into evicting her under the guise of a mold problem in her house. The charge stings, but Carly's attention is drawn to Rocco, a kid who is already dealing with the complications of his family's complicated history. Albrecht's promise to tell Rocco the truth about Lulu's history is a risky play that could jeopardize the fragile bond between mother and son. Carly's answer is swift. She warns Albrecht of the emotional devastation her actions could cause, pushing her to choose Rocco's well-being over her own vendettas. The confrontation is a clash of titans, with each woman wielding her own type of power. Carly's is based on devotion and love, while Albrecht's is based on manipulation and revenge. The air crackles with tension as Carly stands firm, her gaze locked with Albrecht's in a nonverbal challenge to back down. Willow's difficulties go beyond her fight with Lucas. Her personal life is a minefield, exacerbated by her strained relationship with Michael Corinthos and increased dependency on Drew. Rumors of an affair between Willow and Drew have begun to surface, threatening to upend Port Charles's fragile social system. Carly, who previously accepted Willow as a daughter-in-law, is now consumed by sentiments of betrayal that cut to her core. Carly is stunned to learn that Drew, her former lover, is involved with both Willow and Nina Reeves, Willow's mother. Her relationship with her son Michael has always been her anchor, but this treachery feels like a personal attack, a hurt that grows with each new detail she discovers. Carly's protective instincts kick in, and she begins to plan a course of action with potentially far-reaching repercussions. Her thoughts turn to a custody struggle, a legal ploy to steal power from Willow and Drew, and keep Michael's children safe from what she perceives as their reckless influence. The prospect of Willow losing her children is a black cloud on the horizon, and Carly is willing to summon it if it means protecting her family. Drew's motivations are a complex mix of ambition and desperation. His political ambitions, once a faraway fantasy, now loom large as he considers a congressional seat in Washington, D.C. Power is alluring, but it comes at a cost. His ties in Port Charles are deteriorating, and each decision brings him closer to the point of no return. The affair with Willow, while born of real affection, has become a liability, a secret that could undermine his carefully cultivated image. Nina's involvement adds another layer of intricacy, with her agenda intersecting with Drew's in ways that make deciphering their motivations nearly impossible. Drew realizes he's been playing a hazardous game, but he can't back out now. His strong comment to Jason was intended to exert control, but it has just widened the gap between them. Jason's punch, delivered days earlier, was more than just a physical blow. It was a warning, a reminder that betrayal in Port Charles has consequences. Drew's mind rushes as he analyzes his next move, knowing that each decision he takes would either propel him to new heights or plunge him into obscurity. Carly's plans, meanwhile, take on a life of their own. Her plan to reveal Drew and Willow's affair is more than simply vengeance. It's about regaining control in a world that seems increasingly unpredictable. The rumor of Willow miscarrying, which is circulating throughout Port Charles, adds a terrible twist to Carly's strategy. While she would never wish harm on an unborn child, her desire to end Willow and Drew's relationship drives her to consider actions that are morally ambiguous. Her discussion with Diane Miller, her trusty attorney, marks a watershed moment. Diane warns Carly of the dangers, but her resolve is unwavering. Willow's actions, she believes, are a betrayal not only of Michael, but also of the family she has worked so hard to preserve. The prospect of Willow forbidding her from seeing her grandkids is too painful to bear, and Carly's reaction is to fight fire with fire. She gathers evidence, using her connections to establish a case that might jeopardize Drew and Willow's reputation. The stakes are tremendous, and the consequences promise to reverberate throughout Port Charles, leaving no one unaffected. Albrecht, for her part, is not easily intimidated. Her return to Port Charles has reopened old wounds, especially between Lulu and Dante Falconeri. Rocco's interest with Albrecht, fueled by his discovery of Britt Westbourne's convoluted legacy, confuses matters even more. Britt, Albrecht's daughter, was a controversial figure, with both heroic and wicked behaviors. Rocco's quest to understand her, to view her as more than her mistakes, causes him to disagree with his parents. Lulu's desire that Albrecht stay away from her son is motivated by fear that Albrecht's influence may corrupt Rocco's perspective of his family. Dante, torn between his responsibilities as a parent and his allegiance to Sonny Corinthos, strives to negotiate the issue. Albrecht's presence is a reminder of past betrayals, and her cryptic remarks concerning Britt's presumed death further add to the mystery. Jason's sighting of a lady like Britt in Paris adds to the conjecture, leaving Carly wondering whether another secret is about to be revealed. As the strands of these tensions intersect, Port Charles becomes a boiling pot of emotions and ambitions. Willow's defense of her conduct, both to Elizabeth and to herself, is a desperate attempt to maintain the life she has created. Drew's forceful statement, intended to exert control, betrays his weakness as a man torn between his ambitions and the repercussions of his decisions. Carly's warning to Albrecht is simply one part of a bigger strategy, a chess game in which every move could result in checkmate or tragedy. The possibility of Britt's return remains big, a wild card that may upend everything. Josslyn Jax, on a mission in Dalmatia, considers the idea that Britt staged her death, a revelation that could change alliances and resurrect old feuds. Anna Devane's interrogation of Jack Brennan adds another layer of mystery, as her desire to learn the truth about Josslyn's goal clashes with Brennan's enigmatic assurances. The drama of Port Charles is a real, breathing creature, with each character's actions contributing to a cycle of betrayal, repentance, and retribution. Willow's attempt to protect herself is about more than simply one instance of weakness. It is about demonstrating her worth in a world that evaluates her harshly. Drew's bold declaration is a cry for control in a life that is slipping away from him, a gamble that could cost him everything. Carly's warning to Albrecht is a line in the sand, a proclamation that she would do whatever it takes to preserve her family, even if it includes destroying those who stand in her way. As secrets are revealed and loyalties are tested, Port Charles teeters on the verge of disaster, with each player in this complex game ignorant of the full ramifications of their actions. When the truth eventually comes out, there will be a reckoning, reshaping relationships and redefining the destiny of this shattered community.